Hi everyone, this is our final project for ELRC 7500. This is our experiential learning project. And so I just kind of wanted to take you through a couple of the steps of what I did in my project. And first and foremost, I just want to say thank you all so much. It's been such an enlightening 6-7 weeks that we've all been together, and I've learned so much from each of you. So this is kind of my final to do. So I went ahead and focused on my district, which is Gulfport School District here in Gulfport, Mississippi. And so what I actually did is I focused on the school district and I focused on the high school. And I'll explain in kind of a little bit as to why I decided to take that route. So starting with my school district, it is one of 2 public school districts serving Gulfport students. Recently, within the last probably 5 years or so, they've actually rezoned the district. And so we are like a hop, skip, and a jump next door to West Harrison High School. So if students are not attending Gulfport School District, they are attending the Harrison County schools. So our district is basically the smaller of the 2 of them. It serves a total of about 6,300, so 6,367 students. And it's got 10 schools total. So there's 1 major high school, 2 middle schools, 6 elementary schools, and 1 alternative school. And actually our elementary schools have shifted around a little bit this year because in years past we've actually had 8 elementary schools. 2 of them have been absorbed this year. And so their students and their teachers have been absorbed into other elementary schools. We are doing away with alternative education next year because we are transitioning to our virtual academy. And so rather than having students attend an alternate education, instead they would transition to the virtual academy, and that's something that's kind of been in the works. Just a couple of accomplishments about our district. So I can only go off of the 2018-2019 accountability model, but basically because we didn't have our test scores last year. But the Gulfport School District ranked as an A district, which is fabulous. We have no failing schools, so all districts are passing with C's or higher. In most cases, most of the schools are A's or B's. I think we only have 1 C school in the district, maybe 2. We are ranked number 7 as one of the best school districts in Mississippi from Niche, and there is an 89.8% graduation rate. They are hoping to move that up. The goal, I believe, is for it to be close to like a 92% next year. And we have 71.7 students who are in our advanced courses. And we're showing growth in our post-secondary enrollment. These are students who are looking to go ahead and kind of enroll in our universities after graduating, whether that be community college or the 4-year universities. You can see kind of based off the little chart that I gave you in the bottom right-hand corner, one thing that is really lovely about our school is that we have a pretty diverse population. We actually have our African American population is larger than the state average. So we do have a fairly significant African American population compared to other schools within the state. But I think that's part of what makes our district so notable is that our ACT score, actually we tend to score, I believe it's like 21.6 is our school average. So they hold their own when it comes to doing ACT here along the Gulf Coast. So I went ahead and I did a little bit of the technology assessment, kind of looking at our school district. So what I was able to do that was so fabulous, and probably my favorite part of this particular project, was being able to talk to our district technology coordinator, Dr. Tracy Daniel Hardy. She set up a Zoom conference with me, which was lovely because we were able to talk face to face. And I thought it was completely appropriate that we were Zooming, especially when we were talking about technology integration. And one of the things that she pointed out to me that it was an eye-opener. And actually, I kind of wish I would have known this at the beginning of the course, because I think maybe some of the things that I would have explored through a critical lens would have been a little different. Is I had basically talked about, we had gone through a dramatic shift over the last few years with the technology, and she stopped me and basically said that our district, in fact, is not going through a dramatic shift. She said that we are almost on point with part of their 5-year plan. So 5 years ago, the plan was to get students to a one-to-one technology. The idea was to get the technology and the laptops in the classroom. And in my time here, I've been here for 6 years, I've watched us go from laptops to Chromebooks, We've had older Chromebooks, now we have newer Chromebooks. We've come from carts and classroom carts and accessibility to now we have every student with their own device. And so she said that very much was part of the district planning, was for us to be a part of that technology integration, and that it's been very, very successful. I asked about the funding for some of these computers, kind of where do they come from? And so what she was talking about is that Mississippi Connects, which is House Bill 1788, is part of the funding that came down from COVID-19. It was part of the legislation passed to help schools be able to integrate technology and for students to be able to do virtual learning. And so she said that we were fortunate enough that we already had a lot of technology, but that the HB 1788 bill actually allowed us to go through and delete technology that wasn't being used, and to upgrade a lot of our technology, and to also do some investing in programs. You'll hear me talking a little bit about our Case 21 platform, and that's a pretty big chunk of change. And so that's been part of it, is that 1788 allowed us to purchase those types of programs. So one of the things that Dr. Daniels talked about was the idea of her role in working with budget spending. She does not actually control the budget. Each school individually has their own budgets, and so her job is to sit with the principals and basically talk them through the process, give them recommendations on what they should improve. She said she recommends that they actually purchase 1/3 of Chromebooks every year, so that as students are returning them, if they're in shambles, we're not struggling to try to replace them because there are always Chromebooks available. So she said that's kind of been one of her big pushes, is to really work with administration and have them prepared to spend their budgets wisely, and not waste their funding on something that's not working. She also talked a little bit about Title I funding, and she said that we are considered a Title I district. However, Bayou View Elementary School is qualified as Title I but does not receive their Title I funding, and Gulfport High School is considered Title I, and we sign off our funding. And basically what that allows us to do is to take the money that we should be receiving in Title I, and it's restructured throughout the district. So some of our schools that cater to our lower students, our high-risk groups, they're getting more funding necessary for the technology. She said that at the end, we could easily go back and request the funding, but that it just redistributes everybody's budget. And so they really rely on the high school and that one particular elementary school to sign off on their budget, which I thought was kind of interesting. According to a district survey, this is something that we talked about. Every year at the end of the year, the students take a district-wide survey, and every year at the beginning of the year, they take a district-wide survey. And according to the one that we got at the beginning of the school year, 80% of students have access to the internet at home, and these actually align with the Gulfport census. So when the families within Gulfport, completed the census, that was one of the questions that was asked. And so she said that these numbers are closely aligning. So what we did is to compensate for the 20% of students who do not have internet access at home. She purchased 186 hotspots. And she said at no point have all 186 hotspots gone out at the same time. So we've never had to distribute all of them. In most cases, parents are purchasing what they need for their students, especially those who are virtual. The hotspots seem to be for students who are kind of being put into quarantine temporarily and don't have internet access. So the district has followed the 5-year plan. They've done very well with it, surprisingly. So it has not, in fact, been a dramatic shift, but instead the absolute opposite. It's been a gradual shift, and she said it's been very successful. So this is about the year that the 5-year plan lapses. However, because of new Mississippi law, districts are no longer required to submit written plans. Now everybody, they kind of made the assumption that everybody follows the Mississippi Technology Plan, and she said that we are now part of our district 5-year plan total. So there's not specifically a technology plan. We've kind of been absorbed into the district-wide plan. And if you go back and you look at it, you can kind of see the underlying technology. I do wish it was a little bit more technology focused. But I think because we've been successful with integrating and getting the equipment in here, I think those are some really strong first steps. But I definitely think that we need to start evaluating what are we doing with our technology now that we've been given the equipment. What do we do with it? So some of the future endeavors, kind of like I spoke about a minute ago, next year they are opening a K-12 virtual academy, and these are going to be students who are agreeing to attend basically a whole different school, all online. And so they've opened it for, at my high school, 9th and 10th grade, because they have not quite been able to work out the kinks yet in regards to electives. So right now, 9 and 10 cover our core classes, and the virtual academy works effectively. And then starting next year, they will be doing flexible scheduling. So we will basically have school year round. We'll start in July and we go 9 weeks, and then we have 2-week intersessions in between. And so one of the things that we talked about is that during the intersession, that's a great opportunity to offer some professional development, to get some people to come in, during their 2 weeks off, even for a couple of days, and just kind of learn the next level. The one thing about our schedule right now is, our 9 weeks will end on a Wednesday, and the next 9 weeks starts on a Thursday, and you never really kind of feel like you have a chance to go back and revisit. So this could be a really great ability to go back, offer some good training, and then revisit that training to make sure that it's up to par. So looking at the high school, the reason I decided to focus on the high school, 1, because it is the only one within the district, and 2, because I wanted to be able to look at this entire process through the critical lens of English. And so in order to do that, I wanted to be able to access the data. And so it seemed easiest at this point to kind of focus on the Gulfport High School data in particular. So a couple of things. Our 9th grade is basically a school within a school. So it has its own principal. It's got 25 teachers. And basically they're all in one building together. They go to the same lunch together. It's a great way to transition students into the high school setting. And then grades 10 through 12, this is where we've got our 89.8% graduation rate. We've got about 63.7% of students are eligible for free lunch, and then a pretty wide demographic. So one of the things that is interesting about the school split is that 9 and 10 focus on our core electives, our math, science, English, history, with some minor emphasis in the electives. We very much push ACT and college and career readiness. In 11th and 12th grade, our students shift to academic institutes, and these are much more career related. These are a great way to kind of help students work through pathways, focus on skills and aptitude. And that's a big way that our district has been able to grow its graduation rate so dramatically in the last 10 years. I think they said that 10 years ago, the graduation rate was somewhere around about 67%, and now we're at 89.8. So there's been a really big turnaround in regards to graduation rate with the introduction to these 11th and 12th grade shifts. So that's been really great. So in looking just at the technology accessibility at the high school level, kind of like I said, at this point, students have one-to-one Chromebooks. All classrooms are equipped with smart boards or Promethean boards. I wanted to mention that in some classes, we have swivel devices. I kind of mentioned this earlier in one of my presentations, and it's basically a device that will follow the teacher around the room as she teaches. And it's been the way that we've tried to kind of work in our virtual students and being able to really accommodate to those virtual students. We run our grade books and our information systems all online. It's all digital. However, they're very much controlled by admin. And I think that that's important to recognize because at the end of the day, there's very little that as teachers we have to control in regards to the information system. So they have to keep that secure. That really kind of goes back to that idea of data privacy that we were talking about. I can't see students' medical histories. I can see their schedules, but I really can't go through and kind of dig through some information. And then our digital grade books, I can only see my grade books, so I can't even access other teachers' grade books. And a lot of that, I think, more than anything, is to protect the student's privacy and allows us to use the technology for great organization purposes without making it messier than it needs to be. It's also been a really great way to be able to, for our admin, to stay on top of the grading system. So we aren't having teachers who are trying to put things in last minute. You can very clearly see when a student was absent. Because of the way the grade book works. Everything restructures the averages for you. So it's made grading much different than when my mom was teaching and had to have a good old-fashioned grade book. So those little things we've been able to use the technology for good. We currently district-wide are focusing on two main testing platforms, Case 21 and EdgeElastic. In fact, district-wide, most of the teachers are using EdgeElastic. Case 21 has been used exclusively at the high school for state-tested courses. So your U.S. History, English 2, Algebra 1, and your biology. They use Case 21. So it is a very limited group of people who can use it, but the platform is fabulous because it mimics kind of what they're going to see on the state test. It does a really great job of collecting data and allowing us to look at the data based on standards, based on performance, growth. It kind of incorporates everything that we really need when it comes to trying to get our students to pass the state test. One of the things, as just kind of a critical piece, I guess if we're talking about technology analysis, is the fact that the district or that the school, we have great technology and great equipment available to us, but I really think there is not a push to integrate technology into the lessons as much as there could be. So I was saying, something as simple as when we turn in lesson plans, just having a box where teachers can discuss what technology they're using to meet these goals that they've set for themselves. What are their digital goals? What are their technology-related goals? I keep revisiting this idea of the digital divide. This struck me so much about how for years the digital divide was based on accessibility, and now we're seeing this new digital divide where it's no longer accessibility, it's now related to what are you doing with it? Are students creating? Are they building something? Are they designing something? So that's been something that has really stuck with me. And observing and analyzing the school through a critical lens, we do have a digital divide here, and it's not based on access. It's based off of what are we allowing our students to do with the technology we've given them. So one of the things that I went ahead and I added at the bottom, as I said, I was kind of focusing on English, and I'll explain in a little bit why I was focusing on English in particular. But these are our test scores, our state test scores. You can see we score about a 51% in proficiency. We've shown 69% growth, and then 56.7% growth in the lowest 25. And one of the things that I talk about in my plan is the idea that the state goal is that they want all students to be at 75% proficiency. And realistically, especially with some of our bottom 25 students, I don't know if we can get them to proficient. I would hope we could. So that's where growth really comes in, and that's been the push the last few years, is we are really focusing on growth. Because when we look at the accountability model, growth counts so much. And if you look here, our growth of our bottom 25 students, these students actually count twice. So we get scored on how much we've grown our bottom 25, and we get scored for growth. So if we can prove that a special ed student, for example, has gone up a couple of points on the state test, well, that student's now going to count for double. They count for growth, and they count for bottom 25 growth. So that has been a really big push that we've had in our school, is trying it, growth. Everything is about the growth model. I will say that the lower 25%, in regards to proficiency and growth scores, we are above the state average, but when it comes to the lower 25%, we are actually at or below the state average, which has put us on it's called ATSI, and it's basically a school improvement plan through the state. So as of right now, we are focusing on our special needs population and really growing them, which is going to help grow our bottom 25%. So one of the things we were asked to do was basically look at some of the challenges and some of the opportunities, and I thought I'd just take a minute and kind of walk through each of them. So one of the things that I talked about throughout my project is this need for professional development, and I'm going to flip the slide and I'm going to come right back to it. But basically, I sent out a survey to all English teachers district-wide, and so I asked them, and this one stuck out to me, I'm sorry, in particular, and they had to just agree or disagree. My district has provided an appropriate amount of training specific to my content area. And so you can see, just looking at this, 37.5 teachers disagree, 16.7% strongly disagree, and 20% are neutral. Now, we still have about 20% of teachers who would agree with this, but overall, I mean, we've got half, if not more, of our teachers who are saying that the technology training isn't specific to our content area, and that has been a massive issue that we've been trying to kind of fight and work through over the last few years. We get this new technology, but there's never really training on how does this technology help me as an English teacher. Even in trainings, they will put all the content, all the grade levels together, and there's usually some speaker who comes in and shows us this cool way to, throw together a PowerPoint. But I never have somebody say, okay, this is what you're focusing on in English. Let me show you, all of these different strategies and how this technology can help you. So that was something that I really focused on, was this idea of not just needing professional development, not just needing follow-up professional development, but needing professional development that is content specific. The more English teachers I talked to, the more I got that many of them felt very intimidated because they felt like that technology is more STEM related. And that it really caters to math and science. And so as English teachers, aside from essay writing, they don't really know kind of where to go with this technology, which I think in part is part of that digital divide. Once again, we've got to kind of close those gaps in order for our teachers to be able to effectively carry these lessons out and help our students. So the second thing that I focused on was talking about growth of the bottom 25%, and actually growth of the bottom 25% and student learning kind of go together. So one of the things that kind of stuck out to me was when we watched the TED Talk, the neuroscientist was talking about the idea of how our brains learn and how our brains naturally learn by associating learning with pleasure because of all the endorphins released in the brain. And so that really had me thinking about our bottom 25% of students. And one of the things he talked about in the TED Talk was kind of the arc. And he said that if students are too intimidated by the work, then they kind of shut down and it's not pleasurable. And if students are bored by the work, then they shut down and learning isn't happening. And so in regards to a district-wide push to grow the bottom 25%, I really think that student-centered learning is where it's at. I think we need to start pushing students to a more project-based learning style. I think we need to start relinquishing some of the control that we have in our classrooms because our technology can do so much and we've whittled it down to essay writing and Google Classroom. And so I think, going back, we need strong professional development on student-centered learning. But I really think with the right access, with the right people, with the right training, with the right framework, allowing students to work at their own pace, that is going to be incredible for these bottom 25 students. Especially if you allow students to kind of work in cohorts, that gives you as a teacher the opportunity to sit down and work with that student kind of one-on-one. So this is a really powerful opportunity to the way I put it kind of in my paper is, just like we talk about how we don't like to standardize test kids because kids learn differently and they test differently, we can't standardize teach students either. We have to be able to adapt to student needs. And realistically, I teach 100 students, so trying to adapt to 100 different students, it seems almost impossible. But if we've got this technology, we've got the ability, these AI programs and all these great programs that are allowing us to kind of personalize learning, then that's something that we really need to start focusing on if that's going to be our push as a district. So one of the other things that we were asked to do was to look at the opportunities that would be available. And so these are kind of the three that I focused on. I really think my district could benefit incredibly from looking into that future ready framework. The more I read up on it and the more I looked at the process that they take the school through, like this seems like something that we as a district, we as a school could very much benefit from. I kind of love the idea of having almost like a coach to guide you because I do think that our technology department, they are incredible people, but I also think a lot of times, their plates become very full. Networks crash, testing is always happening. You've got 10 different schools to deal with, and it kind of feels like they're always sending people off, kids bringing in computers that are broken. You become troubleshooting and tech support. So sometimes it's hard to be able to focus on one specific school. So bringing in something like the Future Ready framework is going to allow professionals who are familiar with this framework, who are well practiced, who obviously are not new to this, and they've helped other schools get here. This is a really great opportunity to kind of bring them in and bring Future Ready schools in and allow them to help us begin that digital transformation. I also think that that would help a lot in regards to our virtual academy. I think not just our traditional students, but bringing in a Future Ready framework. If you're creating a virtual academy, I kind of feel like right now, we're flying a plane blind, and we're just hoping that it's going to work and it's going to work well. And so I think this could be a great opportunity to put some trained pilots in the seat next to you and have them help guide your plane while it's being built. And then finally, digital portfolios. When I thought about opportunities, I thought this would be a really great opportunity for students to showcase their work. Similar to what we do in these courses, every time a student's completing an assignment, like we could easily have that kind of uploaded and hold on to it so that by the end of their career, students have all of this access to the digital projects they've created, to the papers that they've written, to things that they've been working on. I've had students in the past who have come back and emailed me and asked me for copies of something that they did in class because when they went off to college, they were talking about it and they wanted to be able to revisit some of the work that they had done. So a digital portfolio is a great way to hold students accountable, to hold teachers accountable, and then at the end allow students to really explore their work, reflect on their work, and demonstrate their growth over their entire high school career. One of our senior teachers who kind of went through and she read through this project for me was in love with this idea and was talking with me about some ways that this might really be able to come to fruition over in the 11th and 12th grade institutes. So I think this is something that could really be in the works kind of moving forward in the future. Finally, I wanted to talk about my action plan just a little bit, and it is a couple of pages, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But I kind of had two main focuses. And my first one was to expand technology professional development opportunities, specifically focusing on ELA. And then my second one was leveraging technology to improve student performance and reading proficiency. So at the end of the day, what we have to recognize, and you can kind of follow it from my images at the top, is that we have to be willing to collaborate together across disciplines. We have to be able to collaborate from our district, with our technology group, with our teachers, with our parents, with our stakeholders, with our students. It requires everyone to work together in order for anything to happen. But more importantly, we have to recognize who our benefactors are. Our students are the ones who are going to reap the benefits of this. It's not about me as a teacher. It's about what am I doing to allow my students to succeed. I've got to start giving them opportunities to really explore their learning in a much more authentic way. When I think about what kind of things my students take away, every year I ask them, what were some of your favorite projects? What are some of your favorite things that we've done? It always has to do with some kind of assignment where they had to do research and they had to go explore something they were interested in, and they were talking about things that relate to them. And so again, it just reinforces all of these ideas of everything kind of being relatable. So to talk about goal number one very quickly, about expanding professional development, one of the things that I thought would be very helpful would be, first off, to kind of get your ELA department, and I'm focusing again on the high school, but get the department to meet with their teams initially and kind of discuss what worked versus what didn't work, and kind of compile a list of what are your needs for next year. Moving forward, it's hard to just throw professional development out there. So what type of professional development? The last thing you want to do is put something together that teachers aren't interested in because they've already sat through it. We don't need any more Google Classroom training. We've done 15 of them. But now maybe we want to focus on vocabulary, or maybe we want to focus on reading comprehension. So as teams, I suggested they create like brief technology goals, almost like a brief plan of what are their goals for the end of the following school year and what kind of things do they need from the district level. And then we could come together as a full department, so 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade English teachers, and kind of compile one giant list with the understanding that the technology coordinator would be present at those meetings. In talking to Dr. Daniel, there were things that she was pointing out to me that I was like, oh my gosh, I don't realize this, I didn't realize this, I didn't realize this. And so I think that in having her present at some type of departmental meeting, she could really bring a lot of clarity. So there might be things that we're saying we need, which are accessible, we just don't know how to get to it. Again, I think that's where communication comes into play. There might be equipment or technology or programs out there, and your teachers just need to be told where to go find them. So I think having her present at this meeting and allowing her the opportunity to go through and kind of hear, okay, this is what the teachers are saying they need for English, for ELA, and then being able to go back and provide a training calendar where it's got follow-up training scheduled in there. And basically, one of the things that I argued in my action plan is you want to bring people from outside the district. And I will explain why. And what I mean by this is, I think it would be terribly, terribly helpful if someone who is running a program for vocabulary came in and spoke with us. I feel like teachers are much more receptive when they feel like they're talking to somebody who understands them. I think a lot of times, if our technology department comes in and tries to explain something, they've been out of the classroom for so long that they forget things. They don't see the little holes and the flaws and the problems because they haven't taught English. And so I think it would be beneficial to have English, previous English teachers, or have, current English teachers come in and be able to kind of talk through this process. I sat through something very similar where a teacher from Ocean Springs, which is one of our local high schools, she came in and she talked to us about how they do some things through special education. And it was so enlightening to just have somebody outside of district come in and just say, well, why don't you think about it this way? And so if they were going to offer any kind of technology training, I think it would be beneficial, especially looking at ELA, to bring in somebody whose specialty is ELA. So that's one of the things that I brought up. I brought up that I think each teacher should have to come up with a set of just a couple of technology goals, and kind of like I talked about, incorporating them into the lesson plans and incorporating them into lessons. I really think just like we want our students to meet certain criteria, we have to be able to do that as teachers as well. And so there needs to be a little bit of accountability there, and that's something that we're all kind of looking at. So at the end of the 9 weeks, one of the things that I would like to do is I would like to kind of basically debrief. I talked about in my technology plan, or in my action plan, I think the technology department needs to come through and do some observations, but just focus on technology uses, not as a gotcha, but to look and see, is the training working? Are the teachers using the technology appropriately? And where can they improve? And then I think there needs to be kind of a sit down, kind of reflection, discussion, deconstruction of what was observed and how to improve it. Having the technology is not enough. We have got to start pushing teachers to use it effectively and to use it to best benefit our students. The second goal that I kind of talked about was using technology to improve student performance. And so one of the things that I talked about was trying to shift the curriculum to more project-based learning, but also having to pull in kind of our teachers, our ELA teachers, to brainstorm what would project-based learning look like in our school currently, to make sure that we're addressing the needs of the students. I think it would be important for us to adopt one central framework. We are famous for using multiple platforms, whether it be testing or multiple frameworks. So I think selecting one solid framework to be able to base our plans on would be incredibly helpful, and to kind of start doing this shift where we're creating like our portfolio program, or we are helping students to do kind of some real world research. One of the things I argued in my action plan is I think it would be helpful to have a student committee. I think before you try to implement anything, you don't just need teacher input, you need student input. Students will help identify the gaps. They'll find the holes. They're the ones who will ask the good questions. And these committees can't just be made up of honor students. We need our bottom 25 students. We need our middle students. We need our advanced students to be able to go through and say, okay, if we were doing project-based learning, what would this look like to you? Do you think your peers would buy into it? Why not? Because if this is something that's going to be a massive shift, we've got to get our students on board. We've got to get our teachers on board. And I think it's really important to recognize some of the limitations of a program like this before jumping in and starting it. So one of the things that I argued in regards to the project-based learning is that I really think teachers, or I'm sorry, the technology committee who is kind of putting this together should really almost do a year-long trial run. I think it would be smartest to pick 2 teachers from each content area and have them run the year in a project-based learning, have them attend some summer trainings, and have them very comfortable to run it, and allow them to go through and do this for the year, because then what you can do is you can compare data, right? So you've got students who are being taught in the quote traditional format, and then you've got students who are being taught in this project-based learning format. So you can kind of see, are these skills being carried over? Are scores going up? And it also is going to be a great opportunity for your technology department, your coordinator, your committee, to be able to evaluate at the end of that first year, like, is this going to work? Is this going to be successful? Is it going to be successful for all of our students, for all of our teachers? And you can really identify some of the issues prior to rolling out this whole idea of project-based learning. So finally, I just want to finish with a quote from John Dewey, and he says, "If we teach today as we taught yesterday, we rob our children of tomorrow." Technology is part of our lives. It's not going away. If anything, it's only going to continue to change. And so I think as teachers and as educators, it's really important that we get on board with this, because we go into teaching for children, for our students. And so we don't need to be afraid to try something new, because at the end of the day, it's for them. So we can't continue teaching like we've been teaching, because the world is changing. And so that's kind of my biggest takeaway, is looking at professional development, looking at student-centered learning, look at project-based learning. And I really think our district, we could do some really great, incredible things with the right framework and with the right mindset.